1916 was complex. Well, the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. And you'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Well, here we are on Monday, 10/3/2016. Julie and I were batting things around over the weekend, and I felt led to talk about electronics or electrical, that of phase, three-phase, single-phase, 360 degrees, out of phase, in phase, current lagging, voltage lagging. If anyone's familiar with all that, they know what I'm talking about. AC motors, variable frequency drives. That's the kind of stuff that I used to do all the time. Had to engineer it into water systems, pump systems, braking systems, all kinds of stuff. And it's actually quite interesting. Dangerous when you're around the big stuff, but that's just the way that goes. And I felt led to talk to Julie about it, and one thing led to another, and we came up with a bunch of things, and we're just going to throw it at you and see what sticks. I know that there's a relation to it because everything that we've been talking about in the past months has to do with resonance frequencies, CERN, Mandela effect, all the things that are intruding into our lives, has been controlling our lives for a very, very long time. And so I'm going to bring some things up, even some stuff I haven't talked to Julie about yet. So, but before we get into that, though, there's going to be some relation here to the Masonic Lodge. And if you have not gone to the old shows, that was the last shows that I did on Scott Hensler Network. If you go to scotthensler.org, that'll connect you to it. And there are 4 shows that I did on the Masonic of renouncing. I've got the Freemason renouncing prayers on scotthensler.org. And they're free. You can just click on it and it'll download for you. And I recommend that everyone do it. Now, there's a great connection with how the United States is structured, both in the roads, latitude, longitude, those things of the electrical grid, those things of Washington, D.C. Everything is in a matrix put in place by evil. The frequencies that were chosen were put in place by evil. Those things of cell towers we know as cyclotronics. Those frequencies that the cell phones are on is not by mistake. It's not like there was an allocation of frequency by the FCC. There was a military tactic behind these frequencies. They were chosen intentionally because they have to do with our brainwaves, with the resonance of our bodies, the way we think, act, and so here we are now controlled by these things as a double duty, as I've talked about before. And so I'm going to get into a little more in depth about that in its relation to Europe and the United States, the Atlantic, the Pacific, Mexico, those things that are all around us. But in reality, when we look at Revelation 13, with the beast that comes out of the sea, what are we talking about? How's that going to work? And so this is part of what Julie and I had stumbled across. Now, again, I want to thank everyone for supporting. You know, this has been a struggle since we were revealing things about Zionism. There was a lot of people who bailed. This just didn't want to receive the fact of the true evil that's been imploded onto us, when actually we see it in Scripture. It tells us right off the bat. And so the influences of Zionism into the mainstream churches has programmed Christianity to be a cult. And I'm sorry, and I say that with ease. I didn't before. It was very difficult. All right? It was very difficult to come out of that programming, that psyop that I had been indoctrinated into. Now, I've been doing deliverance for a very long time, and it's what Jesus tells us to do, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's what we're supposed to do. But they'll tell you everything in the world that we don't need to do it. Christians can't have demons. Demons can't bother us. Curses don't exist on us, blah, 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 blah. But 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'm dealing with it, whether it's text, email, Skype, doing these shows, people coming into my office, just trying to go get something to eat, for goodness sakes, is a major demonic problem. I can't even go out to my parking lot without demons, I got gang-stalking demons, for goodness sakes. I take pictures in an intersection, send them to Julie, and it's loaded. In fact, on tinfoilhatclub.com, the one picture I was talking about, I did post it. It's up there next to the Dark Spirit that's at a house. It was actually the train depot in Wallace, Idaho. And I took a picture of it, and you can see kind of a winged, gaseous-looking thing in the air. And then to the right of it is that picture we were talking about last Friday. The other is that Hoodoo Voodoo is still available in paperback, and it's the issues are moving more and more. Kindle is very active. In fact, Second Heaven Invasion is still holding as a 5-star on Kindle, and I thank you for that. And all I'm trying to do is to bring the information that I come across. Look, I'm not a prophet. I'm just a dumb old exorcist. But when you knock a couple of demon heads around, you start learning some things. And so what I wrote in that book is what I've seen over the years, not what I'm prophesying to you. This is the stuff I stumble over every day, the stuff that bites my fingers. And so I'm trying to relay that to you to get you to know who you're dealing with and what to do, strategically. How do I break the curse? How do I cast out the demons? How do I defend my family? That's what it is. And then I put it in the condensed version, Hoodoo Voodoo. And so what is in there? It's a manual. You can go right to the subject, right to the issue. And at the back of the chapters are the words that I use during deliverance, during breaking curses, spiritual warfare. Okay, so it's a quick reference. Get the job done. Get her done. And that's what we're called to do. And you don't have a choice. See, that's not like I'm trying to sell you a used car. You're in it. You're in the parking lot, and you're surrounded by, the world that wants to eat you alive. And you can go over to the Chevy that's been reinforced with bulletproof glass and everything else, and for a reasonable amount, purchase it, get in the car, and drive away without being harmed. And it's like the issue I had here last week, where I had 4 people in here. 2 of them are going to be going to Tanzania. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're talking voodoo, and by the way, I'm going to talk about hoodoo here in a little bit. And to deny the fact that Christians can have demons is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But it's the programming of the church, and it comes really strongly out of the Baptist movement. They're the ones that are the frozen chosen, other than the predestination people. And so literally they're going to the slaughter. A young couple is going to go into the belly of the beast, having absolutely no concept of the open doors that they have because of those things that come out of Mexico, and they're just going to be right for the picking. And the sad thing of it is the child is always the one they're after. So we'll see what happens. All right, gave them my book as a gift because I care about them. They're a nice couple, and the elder couple that brought them in, they're a nice couple. But see, you can be nice and go straight to hell. You can be somebody's buddy and be the absolute most toxic thing that'll take you into sin. The detriment that can happen I showed or talked about the spring cleaning, earlier, when spring came around, that's a few months ago. I eliminated a lot of people in my life. I had to. They were worse than the demons. With friends like that, who needs enemies, right? So when you're actually word cursed, okay, it's every bit as bad as a witch, speaking onto you. If you've got someone who is your friend and you've got a soul tied to them, and they word curse you, you got problems. See? So this is why we're to take every thought captive. We're to watch our mouth. There's life and death in our words. So we have to be very, very, very careful, okay? And mentioning, too, on the Scott Hensler Network show for Blog Talk, now we're on Tinfoil, but there's just hundreds of hours there if you get a chance, if you haven't been there yet, to do that. Now, again, there's still controversy over the Mandela effect, but, we keep running into it. There's something going on, and we can't deny it. And to deny this would be denying what CERN's doing, what the Illuminati, the occult are doing. We're getting, manifestations, all right, more than ever, big boys, and along with the psychotronics issue, and now, the question about Morgellons disease came up again today. And if you're not familiar with that, people think or have the illusion that bugs are under their skin, and then when we investigate, we find out they do. And they've got things that actually manifest, like little starfish and all kinds of garbage out of your skin that actually has to be cut out. And these are fibers. This is nanotechnology. There's all kinds of things being, lowered onto us through chemtrails, and we're breathing them in. We're absorbing them through our skin. If you're familiar with industrial applications of toxic environments, you have to follow OSHA rules. I'm even familiar with NIOSH because of radio waves. It wasn't just basic electrical. It was in radio transmitters of industrial types. So I'm very familiar with NIOSH. And so there's a problem because our eyes, our nose, our mouth, and our skin, and your skin's the largest organ of your body, absorbs all of this stuff that they're spraying onto us. And so when it gets in and manifests and even duplicates, then it can come out of your skin, and it's known as Morgellons disease. And I've dealt with a lot of people who have been horribly, horribly affected by this. I mean, terrible. And along with psychotronics, along with gang stalking, along, even with the demonization, the terrorization from past, generational curses, this is a very serious circumstance. And when you get the so-called churched Christian individual who denies all of this is going on, they literally are in the great deception. Okay? Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and you better wake up. Now, a lot of people are still complaining about ringing in the ears. Okay, I'm dealing with it. I'm being targeted. See, I can speak firsthand now. This all started a few months ago. Interestingly, when I started revealing about psychotronics, then I got nailed. But, I have to. I can't shut up. All right? If you knock me down, it makes me mad, and I'm going to get back up. You better put some stank into it and make sure I don't get up. Do you understand? And all of you, if you haven't, you will be. I'm sorry. See, as soon as they get everyone mapped, or as soon as they've profiled everybody, and when it comes to the martial law, they're going to throw the switch, and all these cell towers are going to it's not going to be pretty. And so the only thing we can do is rely on the blood of Jesus Christ. And in reality, that's really what this show is about. So if you're dealing with that high-pitched frequency ringing, it's not tinnitus. It's a different animal. Yeah, I also mentioned that I believe it has to do with frequency shift keying. Okay, try and visualize this. A baby's rattle. Okay, it's a little round thing, and it's got a couple of beads inside. Beans or whatever, and depending on how old it is. And when you shake it, each bean or bead hits the ball of the rattle and creates a noise. But independently, each one is independently. Each one strikes it differently. Each one, whether it's the bean is curved, so does it hit it flat? Does it hit it on the end? So does it go ping or bong, right? And so I'm trying to get you to understand what frequency shift keying is. So when you have data like telemetry, when you have that of the old teletypes, when you have that of what we have over shortwave, when you download the weather maps if you're out in the ocean somewhere and you don't have satellite. Okay, so what's taking place with this constant noise is like a baby's rattle, only at a very high frequency. And so each ping and pong is a 0 and 1 data. So they're downloading telemetry, or I should say, a fixed information to program into your mind. Okay, and so it can tell you to be sick, it can tell you to be angry, it can tell you to be this and that, and I want to get into a little bit more about that on 60 cycles, which is what we have here in the United States. And so I'm saying that that's what they're doing. This isn't just a noise to drive you crazy, okay, that's subliminal. There's another message behind the message. There's always something, okay? These shrewd dudes that have done this to us for a very long time have got this all figured out. In reality, it's fallen angel technology. Okay, so again, you've got sickness from vaccines, GMOs, chemtrails. I had a yellow dust in my car 2 days prior to me coming down with flu-like symptoms. So where the heck did that come from? Okay, when pollen gets all over the place in the spring, that's here we are in the fall. And that's what I had in my car, and 2 days later I'm sick. Now, the other thing, sickness is referred to as also just having the crud. I think everyone's probably heard that term. And so the crud seems to be going around, but it always seems to go right along with chemtrail. So, again, with Morgellons, sickness, psychotronics, all the stuff that they're throwing onto us, this is crimes against humanity. This is wearing out the saints. This is putting us in a position where we're too weak to fight back. This is what they're doing, okay? So, again, when you get to the mainstream church, they'll deny that. They'll deny demons. They'll deny deliverance. They'll deny curses. So, therefore, they are in the great deception. Now, let me get into what we're really going to talk about tonight. And if you listen to my Masonic Freemason renouncing series that I did, as I mentioned, to go on scotthensler.org for that connection, we talked about Boaz, okay, and one of the pillars. And in those pillars we see for Freemasons the entrances of it, okay, oaths, handshakes, okay, the twin towers, okay, the number 11, all of the stuff that has to do with twos, okay, Boaz, right hand or north pillar. And then we're in conjunction with this is Atlantis, or someone knows the sea as Atlantique. Okay, it's also ancient Athens. Okay, and then we're going to deal with frequency, which is time, how much something happens within a duration. Otherwise, 1 second, a hertz from the individual who created that, Hertz himself, a duration, a repetition, and time, of course, is chronos. Okay, so this is all tied together here. And again, bringing in with Revelation 13:1. As a beast comes out, he's got 7 heads, 10 horns. Okay, on his horns are 10 crowns. On his head is the name blasphemy. Okay, and then we see in 3, he gets a wound. All right, so now let me get into, without trying to get too technical here, and I want you to understand what we stumbled across as I was talking to Julie, for some reason, 3-phase electrical. You've heard of single-phase, 3-phase usually industrial, blah, blah, blah. I used to do it all the time. But what do we have here in the United States? We have 60 cycles, 60 hertz. What does Europe have? 50. Well, that's weird. And I'm going to go through this, how that all came to be. Now, if you remember Tesla, that's why some of the pictures that you see up of him, he basically, went toe-to-toe with Edison. When it comes to AC, alternating current, that's how you get 60 hertz, the frequency. You're able to step power up and you're able to step power down through a, quote, transformer, okay, through induction. And if you just use DC, direct current, like DC is in your car battery, a battery does not alternate, it only gives power in one direction. Where a generator, like a hydro generator, a wind generator, or anything, a steam generator, then as the coils like the motor rotate around, it generates one phase up, one phase down. And because of three-phase, they interlock and they're 90 degrees out from each other. And then you put those together, you get 360. So with the windings, how many windings you have and what RPM you generate tells you whether you're going to have 50 or 60 cycles. So in Europe, they stuck with 50 cycles. Here in the United States, they stuck with 60. So when you buy a transformer and you plug it in the wall and you want to charge up your cell phone, you'll notice that it's 50/60. Well, what they've done is in order to sell product both in Europe and the United States and not have to have another production line, they build them so they're universal. Now, they're not as efficient at 50 hertz, but if you're only doing charging or if it's already over-engineered, it doesn't matter anyways. But they had to compensate for this. And what's interesting is Japan. Of course, that's over in the Pacific. Over here, we were talking about for Europe, we're talking about the Atlantic. That half of the Japan island is split up. Very, very strange. So you've got one north half on 50 and the southern half on 60. Very bizarre, huh? Because you would think they're electrical grid, but I'm telling you, there's something behind all this, okay? And what's interesting about Japan, the Mariana Trench is not too far off of there, which we know Bush made off limits to everybody, okay? The deepest trench in the ocean, which virtually is, we did a show on that, and it's an amazing thing. And it's not just the only one. There's several that go around, okay? But notice that's off the Japan. And you take 50, 60, split it in the island. And I'm going to get into what that's all about, so bear with me. Okay? So again, Tesla AC, Edison DC. Now, I don't know whether you know this or not, but Edison actually tried to oppose Tesla at such a degree when the electric chair came along. They promoted to make the electric chair AC because of Edison, because he was trying to disprove Tesla. And what he was doing was saying that AC was more dangerous than DC. So they took this poor elephant, I believe it was on Long Island, at least in New York somewhere, and they electrocuted the elephant with AC. It was a horrible thing. They have the film. It's a terrible thing, and I don't recommend watching it. It's appalling. And so what Edison was trying to do was to make everyone think that AC was a dangerous thing. So that's where the electric chair was AC. Interesting, huh? Now, a lot of parts of New York, because that's where Edison and his area was at, was DC. I even worked in a factory that was DC. Some of the bigger equipment was all run by DC, and DC has its place, okay, when it comes, especially when it comes to motors and the high torque. That's why locomotives, you see the railroads, okay, you have a diesel engine turning a DC generator, which powers each wheel, which has a DC motor. That's why these trains can pull miles and miles of this heavy stuff with the torque that these DC motors can produce. It's incredible. And that's why you've got a DC starter in your car, because you take a high amount of torque to turn your engine over, okay? Plus, it's just more practical with batteries. All right? So again, when you think of that, just think of Edison for DC, all right? Now, what's interesting is before any standards had come along, they were as low as 40 hertz. Now, at 40 hertz, the lights above you would actually blink. They would actually flash. Okay? Now, if you know of the Pokemon cartoon that they had in Japan, they did an experiment where they caused the TVs, which were high resolution, that during the particular Pokemon cartoon, they had it flash, and they resonated it to a frequency that actually caused the kids to go into convulsion. The hospitals were flooded with thousands of kids. Okay? Whenever like flashes and so forth, if you've got, brain damage or you're under trauma already, these things can cause this to happen, and it's a terrible situation. That was an experiment. It was done intentionally. So what they did is they eventually, by 1891, moved it up to 50. Okay, 50 can still be a problem. Okay, 50 is okay, but here, let me point this out. When it comes to aircraft, the old stuff during World War II, their generators on there were actually 400 hertz, some as high as 450, because the higher you go in frequency, the smaller the devices could be to generate the same amount of power. So on an airplane, you couldn't have a great big generator. So they would go higher in frequency so the generator could be smaller in weight. That's actually, a good idea. So 50 hertz, even though it is somewhat efficient, it certainly is not as near as efficient as 60. So here in the United States, we actually are fairly efficient for our power. Okay? Now, so at 1891, Europe went from 40 to 50, and they pretty much have stayed there. Now, a standard was set in 1893 that even the U.S. had 50 hertz, and they went to 60. So pretty much from that day forth, and the standard was set. Okay, and then making that standard set worldwide came out in 1948, and I'm going to touch on that here in a minute. Okay, but again, Britain, London, 1904 is basically when the national grid started coming in. They finished it by 1926. So Europe was pretty much established as 50 hertz. United States also. Now that also was set in 1948, which happens to be, Julie, you want to take note of this, that the standard of all frequencies were not going to change in place by 1948, which happens to be when Israel became a nation, May 14th, 1948. Now Mexico, I just got the chills on that one. Mexico was the last one to come up. Now they were 50, but in 1970 they finally changed over to 60 hertz. Okay, so the North America, South Americans are 60, Europe 50. Okay? Now, I want you to understand when it comes to frequencies, electromagnetics, and I'm sorry about being complex here. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, that our brains, alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma, our brain waves, okay, at 10 hertz, we can have complete mood-altering changes. Even post-traumatic stress can be triggered. At 2.5, alcohol addiction can actually be recorded. Now, that's pretty interesting. And even in these ranges, in the delta range, arthritis, depression, confusion, and muscle pain. Okay, do you understand how sensitive we are? Now, gamma is in the 40 hertz range. Okay, the high beta is in the 30 hertz range. Okay, so if you notice that in our frequencies we have for power, we're in the 60 hertz range. But here's what's interesting. From 46 to 70 hertz, centering out around 62, strange effects happen to the body. Unexplained events, unexplained illnesses from 46 to 70. And here we are completely surrounded by 60 hertz. Children and the near field to power lines have a higher rate of cancer. There's a higher rate of mental illness, a higher rate of all other diseases from this. All right? Now, I want you to note, too, that when astral projection leaving the body, that frequency range happens to also be between 46 and 70 hertz. That's quite interesting. Right? So when Julie and I were discussing all this, when we were realizing that there's a connection with 90, with Boaz, with Atlantic, 50 hertz, 60 hertz. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Julie because she, through her gematria and the stuff that she works with, these numbers were rolling around in her head, and she literally was coming up to why we were talking about this. All right, so Julie, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, how we got started was I had something else I was telling you, and as we were talking about it, every time a word was mentioned, I was fast calculating the gematria, and I was saying, oh, but this is this, and I remember we were like, and one thing led to another, and we ended up in the Atlantic Ocean, and talking about 50 and 60. Well, when we started talking about that, you had asked me whenever I was talking to you about the gematria, I said it's all based on geometry, and I said it's 90, 90, 90, and that's how we got to the 3 revolutions, because I said, no, it's based on 90, 90, and 90. So well, that's when you said, hey, but there's 3, and then you said you were talking about the 3 revolutions and the electrical current and all that, and that's how we got on that. And then the next thing you know, you were talking about the 60 and the 50 and how that worked, and it hit me all of a sudden. It's 11. It's 11. That's what it is. It's 11, and 11 is the 2 pillars. And what comes between the 2 pillars is the false light, the false Messiah. It's the red and blue pillar, and what comes between is the purple, which is like from the abyss, because the abyss, the pit is always depicted as purple or purple water. And you'll see kind of a red tinge to it and kind of a blue, and then they'll start, oh, my gosh, well, there you go. It was the 2 pillars. The false light comes in between. And then I said to you, where, pray tell, do they say Atlantis is? Please don't tell me. And I said it's probably in the Atlantic. And then I said, don't tell me it's between us and England. And you said, yes, it's in the Atlantic. And I said, where? And then I just knew, and I said, find me the longitude and the latitude, and I'll fetch you. Sure enough, you go online, and you sent me a picture, and it's right square in the middle of the African, European continent and the United States of America. And as soon as you said, I said the 2 in the middle, the false light, and there, remember, like I've been talking about for a while, and I'm sure everybody remembers, that I've been talking about Lemuria and Atlantis and how they want their Atlantis back. And the story goes in the Emerald Tablets of Thoughts that Atlantis was a thriving center, beautiful, thriving, and this is true. Atlantis really did exist, and it really was all that. It's not myth like a lot of you have been told. But here's the thing, Scott. They had technology far light years ahead of what we have now. Like, they look at us, cavemen, with our technology. So everybody look at your cell phone and think, wow, this is an amazing piece of equipment. Actually, it's just cavemen junk from where they were. Their technology was so far ahead of anything that you can't even imagine how their technology was. It was that far advanced. So, and this was Lemuria, who was first, and then Atlantis. And what happened, you had the 2 islands, right, the Atlantis and the Lemuria. And the story goes that the reptilians wanted control of these advanced civilizations, and there was civilization, and they wanted control of it. And this is, now I'm going to tell you guys, I got a bunch of pictures I sent to Scott, and I have even more. You can email me, and I'll send you guys as many as you want. But understand something. When anybody, I don't care who it is, says that they don't believe about reptilians and cloaking, I have to tell you, you are highly uneducated, and you better get with the program, and you better get out of your left brain reality, and you better jump into the other side, because you're fixing to be so shocked that people you went to school with, you spent the night at their house, you were friends with the parents, you're going to see all types of people that you knew uncloak very soon, and all of you old, especially white guy preachers from way back and all that, you better get unstuck out of your left brain. You better figure it out, and you better do it quick, because you're not preparing your flock for what they're going to see, and you will be held accountable. When somebody comes to you that's walked on the other side, and they are offering all their information for free, and you put them down, and you say there's no such thing, that's not possible, you're responsible for what happens to those people that you call your church. You're responsible. The blood is on your hands. So I suggest you pay attention. In the Emerald Tablets of Thought, that they had gone in, the reptilians had gone in, and in the Epic of Gilgamesh, they went in and they cloaked themselves. And what they were doing is there would be a certain high military general or something or whatever, and they would take that person, and what would they do? They would replace them, okay? And they would cloak as that person. That's what they did. They would cloak themselves. And that's how they started to creep into the kingdom and get control, kind of like the Jews do today, the royal family and all these people. They're all reptilians. Understand and get it through your head. They're not human. And they did this in Atlantis and Lemuria. My friends, this is how Atlantis and Lemuria fell, because they were able to cloak. Now, the Atlanteans got wise to their little game, right? They started, just like I'm telling you this, there were people that came to the king and said, look, I'm telling you, I saw good old Bob or good old Jesse. I saw him. I did. And he looked like a lizard. And then all of a sudden he looked like himself again. This started to happen over and over and over again, until people were just flabbergasted that they were seeing people they knew or whatever in the kingdom, and they would see these people that would morph instantaneously one way and back the other. And they had no idea what to do about it. So they started reporting this, and pretty soon word started getting out everywhere. Hey, there's a problem. We've got a problem. And they said, we got to fix this. We got to do this. What are we going to do? And so people started saying, all right, well, we've got to figure out what's going on. Well, somebody started investigating, just like people have done today. What did they find? They found that all these people that were who they thought they were weren't who they thought they were. They started finding out quietly about reptilians, what they can do, where they came from. And guess what? They figured out there was a word that they could not say. There was one word that they couldn't say it. So they would drag anyone suspected of being a reptilian. They would drag them to the high councils, sit them down, and tell them, okay, say this word. And when they could not say the word, it would not come out of their mouth. They couldn't pronounce it. No matter what they did, they would say, okay, this is a reptilian. And that's how they were able to have their kingdom. Was they had learned a word, and it was Keninigan. For some reason, the reptilians couldn't say the word Keninigan. Okay, but eventually the reptilians and their buddies, come to back up, and they get enough people to go evil, to go their way. Just like here in this country, at one point you had all these people that believed in marriages, one man and one woman, and so on and so on. And as people start getting corrupted, that's how these places ended up turning into terrible. A lot of the Atlanteans fled to Lemuria, and then they eventually took over Lemuria. And this is how this all came to pass, that they got knocked out. But that was happening back. These writings that I have researched, and this is the stuff that I do. That's part of how I do my job with the occult. symbols, and it's not just a cult, it's just symbols and things that go back thousands and thousands. And by the way, Atlanteans, the Atlantis and the Lemurians was thousands upon thousands of years ago. Do you understand? It wasn't 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. By the way, anything the church teaches like that, and that's the way it is, and you see them pushing that agenda, anything they push in an agenda like that, know that they are wrong and it's not true, because they were put into place to actually give you a whole history of everything that's not true. They're going to give you some
Julie?
things that are true, but that's what they're going to do. So what ended
Julie?
up happening, yeah?
I wanted everyone to they may have missed the point here. Okay, we have 60 in the United States and 50 on the European. Okay, your numbers that you rolled for that?
Yeah, that was 11.
Okay, 11. So now we have the pillars.
2 pillars. Right.
Okay, so we have one pillar in the United States and one pillar in Europe, and in the middle we have Atlantis. And so what we have is Revelation 13 with the beast coming out of the sea. This is the connection
now, remember,
that I wanted to...
Right, but the other island is also going to come into play, Lemuria, with this 11. That's what's going to happen.
Right. And let me before you go any further, there was a gentleman that I worked with years ago that his demons were so prevalent and would overtake him that a lot of times I didn't know who I was talking to. It was that bad. And so I cursed his demons that they could never say the name of his father. So when I was talking to the guy, and if I was confused on who was speaking to me, was it the human, the guy that I was talking to, or was it his demons, I would ask him, what is your father's name? And the demons couldn't say his name. And so then I knew it was a demon I was talking to. If it was him, he would say, oh, it's Bob. See? So kind of the same thing with this reptilian thing that Julie was talking about. They couldn't say a phrase or a name. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so what I found out was that when you take the 2 letters of Atlantis and Lemuria, then you get 13. That's what it comes down to. So you have Lemuria and Atlantis at 13, and then you have the other one at Atlantis at 11, standing on the sand by the sea, and he saw this beast come up out of the ocean, and everybody at this church kept telling me, all these church people and all the pastor people I would see online, that it was out of the sea represented people. But he didn't say that. He specifically said he was standing on the beach, on the sand, by the sea. So I started to think, a lot of and of course, if all these religions are pushing that it means that he's coming up out of people, that the sea was people, then I know it's wrong. 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So now we have the 2 pillars and the 3 in the middle, and that's the 3 pillars right there. See, there's a 3rd pillar that we don't know about, and that's the one that will rise, and that is what? Lemuria, the 3, the L. So that's what they're trying to resurrect. That's what they're doing. And I guess they're going to. I guess that's where, that's where it's going to come up out of the ocean. And I would assume if it's that big, maybe you could see it. It's going to be so big. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I let me try and find this picture again here. I sent you that picture of that movie Frequency. Okay, did you get a chance to see that? I posted that up. Let me bring it up here. And let's see. Because what you were talking about is here it is. Okay. So if you're on Blog Talk and you see the picture come up and it says Frequency, okay, so it's showing the 2 twin towers with lightning separating the left-right, but on the right is the new tower. And the word frequency, when it comes to the Q, looks like the Horus all-seeing eye. and then there's water where it's reflecting. So as above, so below. Did you see that one, Julie? Did you get a chance to see that?
No, I haven't seen it yet. But if you've got a reflection, that's what it means.
Well, yeah, I was hoping you were going to see this because this movie is amazing. It's literally telling us the third pillar, the third strand. So as above, so below. Frequency, resonance, man, woman on either side. And, so again, this is what they're doing is, again, showing us right under our noses what they plan and what they know and what they're doing. Yeah. So there it is. And so if you get a chance, Julie, did you look at it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see her.
Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm looking at the 3 lights. Yeah, that's going to be the 3 stairs. That's what that symbolizes. And then I see the Twin Towers. Yeah, there you go. And, yeah, okay. If you look in the background, what I just caught my eye right now, there's a series of 3 buildings right there by the Twin Towers. I mean, and I had shown them on other pictures that we posted. One has a square on top, one has a dome on top, and one has a triangle. And if you'll notice, of the 3 buildings, the only one that you can see in the background is which one? It's the womb, the dome. Get it? So that is a veiled reference. That dome is a veiled reference to that we live under a dome. They're telling you right there.
It's between the 2 towers, too. Yeah.
That's right. And then what else does the dome? The dome also represents the womb. So look at the 2 twin towers that came down, and what is rising? The womb, the new birth of the 1 tower, the 1 bloodline, the 1 world order, the 1 people. Yep, that's exactly what they're saying right there. And if you look to the right, there she is. There's the 1 world tower. There it is. And if you look, the way the tower is done, you'll see a line goes straight up and a line comes down, forms a pyramid at the top, and then gets wider going to the bottom. Now, that is actually all the way around the tower where it goes up, down, and comes to a point like the pyramid and then down wider at the bottom. That's the symbol for I am. That's
okay.
You notice, huh?
One more thing here. The female reflection is a male. The male reflection is the female, so they're interchanged.
Yep, there you go. That's exactly what it is. And that 1 tower, if you look, if it goes up and down, that's the Viacom. If you look at Viacom, they have that up and down, the symbol, and that is I am. So when they switch the people down there, he is saying, Lucifer is saying, when God said I am that I am, well, now he's claiming to be the great I am. And in his world, everything is backwards. Everything's inverted. And you know what? I just want to make sure that any of you who listen if you don't believe that the biblical text is correct or is right or is legitimate, I'm going to tell you you're right. You are actually right. There are biblical texts, and it is not legitimate. You're right. And it is fake, and it is messed with, and it is tampered with. And that would be every book so far except that I can see, the Geneva Bible and the King James. And if there's any tampering of those, it just happened recently throughout I don't think it's been forever, but I have gone back and researched these texts. Now, I want to tell you something. If you don't believe that text is real and that's just a made-up story, I'm going to tell you the reason why I knew that book was right and this book was a legitimate text is because of all my years in the occult. That's right. Telling you right. All of the occult that I learned proved that biblical text was correct. Because everything I learned in the occult, I found it in the biblical text, but it was inverted. Everything was backwards. The cross, Jesus was the cornerstone of the world. We don't live on a circle, we live on a cube. Okay? Lucifer copied Jesus, and he has the black cube. the sun, the three-dimensional, the hexagon, okay? He is the cornerstone of his cube, and his cross is the peace sign, the broken up. If you didn't know that, well, now you do. That's his cross, all right? And Jesus is the other cross, and if you put a three-dimensional cube with the corner straight out at you, you can put that cross right there on the cornerstone, and that is Jesus, the cornerstone of the world. So all these things started coming to me when I was reading this biblical text one. That's exactly just the flipped opposite. And the other thing, Scott, is the Quran actually describes, word for word, their Messiah, their Mahdi, and it's word for word out of the King James Bible, word for word, our Antichrist. That's their Mahdi. So I started to notice this. So if you don't believe, I'm telling you now, that book is the enemy. That's his playbook. If you want to know what they're up to, go get a biblical text, get the Geneva Bible, go read it. Go read it, because that's what they're doing. All throughout the occult, it's Skull and Bones 3:22. I started studying the Bible, right? And I come across Genesis 3:22. And I said, oh, they were going to be immortal without going through Jesus. Gee, I wonder if that's related to the Skull and Bones 3:22. There was light bulbs going off all through that book when I started doing all these studies. And Scott, I know it's very hard for people to believe in that book, but you know what? I want to reaffirm that right now, tonight, that if you can go get a Geneva Bible, I just actually am going to go to that one and stick with it. But I do have my King James. But I'm just saying, if you can do that, know for a fact that these crazy men at the helm, these crazy reptilians, they are using that book as their playbook. And they are determined to make everything in this book happen. They are using that to go, and that is what they're going to make happen. Except for the end, they have it wrong. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there, Scott, because I really want people to get the biblical text and read it, because I want people to be prepared for what is coming and what they're doing. And besides that, isn't it kind of nice to know, like, some of the stuff they're up to? Hey, that's what I say. But you're right, Scott. Look at that. It's backwards. See? Mm-hmm. Everything is always backwards with this moron. That's the way he is. And you know what's really odd is if you look at the towers on the water, it's the same thing. You have a tower that has an oval top with a sphere coming out of it, and the oval top, so to speak, with the sphere coming out of it, is on the other side. They're swapped in the water. Completely swapped. So that's what they're doing. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So you know what? 11, yep, that's it. So you know what, Scott? All this stuff, when we were talking about this stuff, and I got the 2 pillars, the 11, the 60, and 50. Now, when we would go, I didn't know that they made them compatible, because I know we had to replace all of our stuff, curling irons and all that kind of stuff. We were going to go get transferred to Jakarta in Indonesia, to Sumatra, and we were going to have to buy all new stuff, so we were just selling all our other stuff. But I knew that happened, but I didn't know they made them compatible.
Well, let's okay, Julie, hang on. I'm not. Don't confuse 110 with 220. That's a whole other animal. We're only talking about the frequencies. So
okay.
The plugs. Okay, so there is a difference, right? And there's a whole other thing behind that, and I won't get into it now.
Well, we would have to buy a plug-in adapter if we wanted to keep ours that would plug into theirs. So, but we had to do that. But what I think is, if you do the 50 and the 60, what I was wondering is, because of where that I can't remember how to say in English, that thing you were talking about that George Bush said you can't go there. The trench.
The Mariana Trench. Right.
Yeah. It's been long speculated by, in the secret societies, that the trench goes down and it goes into another ocean. and then from there it goes into the inner world. And in that world there are a lot of animals that live there, like plesiosaurus and stuff you've never even seen before. And sometimes they make their way out from under that shelf, and they end up here in the upper ocean. Well, I did some research on that thought, and I found that it is true. There is an ocean under our ocean. So I just thought that was, when he said you can't go there, I believe that they are entering and going under that shelf and into the second ocean, into the inner part of the earth. I think that's what they're doing. But would it have anything to do, these frequencies, would it have anything to do with like something from the earth, from the sky, being able to change a frequency to bring this whatever it is up out of the ocean? Would that be possible?
Sure. And in fact, the Schumann resonance of the frequency of the Earth itself, that can change, not by much, but when it does, it changes everything. It changes our moods. It changes how we feel, and so I believe that like insectoids, part of that hybrid reptilian line, that their shell is very sensitive to that. That when that frequency changes, that absolutely messes them up. Just before I turn it back to you, Julie, I wanted to mention on the transatlantic telegraph. Okay, that was established in 1858, which bridged the United States there around New York. Cable laid in the Atlantic all the way crossed over towards Europe, and that would have just touched the very top of the map I have here of Atlantis. And what's interesting is that first cable that they put down through there didn't last very long at all. They had to come back and lay more cable. So I don't know if there was something in that, but it's interesting that instead of laying over the top of it, they just touched the tip, so it wouldn't have actually been on that particular underground area. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's very odd. Well, I was thinking that because of their the frequencies, and I do know this to be a fact. I'm going to send you a picture, Scott, and hopefully you can put it up on Wednesday. I was able to come, and I got a statement from one of the ladies that experienced what just happened. I think it was the day before yesterday. All of a sudden, there was a split-shaped looking portal, is what he called it. That's what he said. And I got pictures of it, and it looks like a split, like a portal. And when this happened, he said it was there for about 10 minutes. And this was like around midnight. He said it was so bright at one point that it looked like the sun was just going down, like it was lit up enough that it still looked like it was, not quite dark outside. And I did get a chance to see the video, and pictures out of his video, and then I went ahead to, I'm going to send them to you. And then another lady right there by Bridge City, Port Arthur, said that she was driving her car, and I got her statement word for word, by the way, and she said that all of a sudden cars all started to swerve off the road, and there was a high-pitched sound associated with this portal, and it was so loud, and people were just driving, swerving all over off the road, and their cars came to a stop, just dead. Wouldn't even, all the power was gone out. So that just happened day before yesterday, and I was told by Tyler at Secure Team that this is normal. He said that when these very often times, this high-pitched sound and then power going off and cars swerving and what have you, that is accompanied with it many, many times. Maybe you could just explain why that happened.
Say it again, so I understand what you're asking.
Well, after there was a portal, a split in the sky, and it was going, and then little did this man know that little bit apart, it was just a couple miles away in Port Arthur, people's cars, they started swerving all over the place and going off the road, the power completely off to their cars. There was high-pitched squealing sound, really high sound, and that nobody could keep their cars on the road, and they just stopped. So I don't understand. It has something to do with frequency. I know that, but what is it doing?
Okay. Well, Julie, let's just take that frequency and let's put that on the shelf. That's what everyone says, but there's a lot more to it. It's a lot more complicated than that. All right. I had somebody who called me years ago, and they were complaining because they had put a CB radio in their car, and as they were driving down the road and they would grab the microphone and key it, their car would die. And because the car would die, then there was no power steering. With no power steering, they were going off the road. Okay, so that's part of what that would be like, the brakes, the whole 9 yards. Well, here it turned out when they had extra cable, the antenna wire, when they put the antenna on the car, they took and they coiled it up and they threw it underneath the mat. Well, in that particular model of the car, the computer was underneath the mat in this little hidden compartment. So every time they would grab the microphone and transmit, the computer of the car was overwhelmed by the radio frequency and shut down the car. It really made a mess of it. So any time that you have something that's pulsed, okay, and that pulse can be measured in frequency. So when I say we need to understand, we don't just use the term frequency. What are we dealing with? Are we dealing with something that's, pulsed, alternating, something, a frequency shift keying, all the different modes, the carrier, these things. So it's very important to know what that is. But any time that you have a large electromagnetic field, especially if it's an alternating one, then it can take anything that is of a what we call a high impedance, which is a computer. A computer is high impedance. And because of being high impedance, it's very susceptible to small electrical voltage. So if you have a signal that's large enough, it can overwhelm that high impedance device. Computers in cars are high impedance. This is why an EMP is so devastating to to electronic equipment. Some of the older tube equipment is more hardy and isn't going to be affected by it. If you have an older car, you have your points, your condenser, your ignition coil. You've got just very basic things to get your engine running. Where today we have these high impedance computers, so they're more susceptible to electromagnetics. So anytime there's that pulse, you're going to have that problem. So the going off the road would be because you lost the power steering, and so forth. So that's what it sounds like to me.
Okay, well I have a picture of a big circular disc cloud, but it's a disc. You can clearly see it, completely cloaking itself like clouds, and all these birds were flying, and they all hit it and fell to the ground dead, all over the place. It was a mess. But they all had head injuries where they flew right into this, looked like a round type disc in the air. So I do know, after doing some, just getting around to different people, that this has been happening, that these birds are just flying along in the air, and there's a cloaked ship up above, and they can't see it, and they're running into it. And this is what is said now to be accounting for the mass amount of birds that are dying and dropping out of the air, because we are literally being watched. And when we talked about this skyline, the trailer from that, and what I was able to see was that these things are in the air all over our world right now. They're up there. We just can't see them because they're cloaking themselves. So I really believe that this, whatever the frequency they're using, however they're doing it, I actually was told by someone who is in the know about these reptilians and this frequency, that there is indeed a frequency band that you can hit, and they literally will come undone. They can't handle it. So that would be, if anybody wants to, help Scott, I know he can make it, but everybody, you guys want to help him create the first model, and we'll see what happens. We'll go to a Walmart and turn it on. How about that, Scott? See what happens.
Well, here's what I was going to do, and Julie, you and I talked about this. Okay, their cloaking has to be at some frequency or resonance, okay? And it's in the spectrum that where they can be in their own spectrum outside of our visual, our white light spectrum. We see colors, we see a little bit of ultraviolet, we see a little bit of infrared, but not very much of it. We're basically in the middle of the white light spectrum. So you have everything below it, you have everything above it that we can't see. So it can be standing there in front of you and you don't see it. And that's pretty spooky, but that's the case. So let's say that we go to Harbor Freight and we go and buy one of these welding helmets that are automatic at 1/125th or 125th of a second, that as soon as you strike an arc, the lens goes dark like automatic shades. Okay, but you can alter that frequency, so every time there's a flash, it turns on. Every time the flash stops, it turns off. But it's capable of doing it at 125 thousandths of a second, which is amazingly fast. You know, it's like photography fast. So let's say we put an oscillator to it, and we cause that to flash on and off at a certain frequency as we visually look through the helmet. Can we find the resonance of the cloaking of reptilians? That's a project that I want to experiment with. Is it need to be implemented with a strobe? So then I find the resonance, or I find the harmonic of their cloaking. Okay, so there's all this stuff that I would like to be dealing with, and I think it's going to be in there somewhere. And how funny it would be that a $49 helmet from Harbor Freight would show you all the reptilians you want to see. Go ahead.
Yeah, that reminds me of the glasses on that movie They Live, you know. But I know that you can, I mean, you've already said it's a no-brainer. I mean, you could do it very easily. So if everybody wants to, you know what, you want to send gifts to him of being able to help him do these things and make at least make a prototype and see how it works. Hey, Scott, you could make those for all kinds of people, and they'd be able to see what's in front of them, you know. But I do know that there were people who learned back in those days at Atlantis, when even the Tibetan monks learned how to get around whatever they were wanting to do. If they wanted to move a 120-ton stone, they would all start and do a certain tone with their voices and just stay on that tone, and it would literally move this stone into whatever place they wanted. It was amazing, and I've actually seen it done, so it is true. It does work. But they say there's a certain frequency that you can hit with your voice and learn to hit that would do something like that to the reptilians. But I don't, that's one of the other things that they don't tell anybody, the secret, that we're taught by these monks.
Well, again, Julie, with the alpha, beta, theta, gamma of our brain, how these cell towers can literally cause us to become sick, nauseated, unconscious, hallucinate. Obviously, they're susceptible to the, so give them a dose of their own medicine. That's the way I look at it.
That's right. I think we should try it, and if he's able to bind them up, so you guys have a way to be able to see, because they have all the advantages, and I think we should have some of the advantages too. I just feel like that's, they've stacked the deck completely in their favor. So it just aggravates me, Scott, because I know that there are ships above us right now that are close, and I know they're there. It just aggravates me that I can't see them and that no one else can see them. So I want to find that frequency where we can do this. I want you to get to work doing it. That's what I want.
Well, here's another thing. Okay, when I was doing evidence retrieval, I had a special flashlight that had 4 colors on it. It had the green, the blue, the red, and the yellow. And if there was a crime scene, we would turn on the specific color that would find, let's say if there was a rape, this would actually enhance and show us semen. Okay, so the introduction of another frequency, which is what light, the blue and the green, are different bands of the frequency, that in its carrier or modulating onto the main, then our visual eye then can detect it back, and so I think that's another probability too, is to be able to find that in between of, okay, for instance, like the old 8mm film. Okay, if they just ran the film through, then it gave the fluttering. But then they had a wheel that rotated with it. They gave an in-between frame stoppage, and so it tricked the eye. So that's the other thing, is our mind is around 30 cycles, because anything over 30, your brain doesn't really interpret it too much. So let's look at the wagon wheel. So when you watch a wagon or a car drive by, and the wheel, when it hits a certain RPM, the wheel tends to look like it stops, and then as it goes faster, then it looks like it's going backwards. Okay, that's an optical illusion because of our brains, of what we're able to interpret. So same thing with astronomy. Some of the first equipment that I worked on when I was at the General Electric labs was astronomy equipment, and it had that the wheel. And so you adjusted the wheel to the resonant or the frequency of the star that we were looking at. So if it was the moon, this particular star versus this one that flashed at a different frequency, it would act like a filter and cut out all the other frequencies and only allow the one of that particular star, so you can have better clarity. So this is all a possibility. And it's all off the shelf. It's just a matter of putting it together and experimenting, I guess we're going to have to find a reptilian and nail him down to see what we get, but I'm all for that. Go ahead.
When you said color, actually the semen is the blue color, by the way. And the black light they use for blood. And then they have this stuff that they can spray on the carpeting and the walls, and then they use that black light, and it'll show up wherever there's blood. Because Randy's had to use it in his work too. But when you said colors, I want to tell you about, I had this man tell me, this was just about a week ago. It's funny you should mention that now. And I meant to tell you, but I just didn't get around to it. He was saying that he was part of an experiment, and this was many years ago, and he got into this craft-looking thing that this guy built, and he said, we're going to time travel. We're going to, he was like, what? And he said, we're actually going to travel. We're going to beat time, and we're going to travel. We're not going to be very far from here. I'll land us close, but that way you can see how it works. And do you understand those colors? This is what the guy said. He said the color that it was all done with a color spectrum, just like you said, and he said the color was aqua. It was a certain shade of aqua, and that was the color that transported us. And he said, I'm not kidding. I sat down. We all sat down, strapped in. He said, all right, time to get up. This dial started to go, the colors. It hit aqua, and boom, that was it. He goes, all right. He said, we barely got sat down, and then it was time to get up and go walk out. When we walked out, we were a couple 100 yards from where we just were. We got back in, sat down, and within a second, we were right back where we started. Got out, and there we were. But he said the color that thing hit and stayed on to transport us was aqua. That's what he said. I got to get that guy on the show. I got to get a hold of him and get it back. I want to talk to him again, because if you heard the guy's name that did this experiment, you'd probably recognize it, Scott, because of your background in all of this stuff. Because I know that this guy probably did. Who knows what kind of work for all these high tech companies. But I'm going to get that information. I'm going to try to get him on the show, because when he said there was a color wheel, and it reminded me of what you were saying, and he said literally the frequency that moved us, and it should have taken X amount of time to get where they were, and he literally sat down, strapped himself. The color popped up off when they got out. It was just a nanosecond, and they were, a few hundred yards from where they started. So whatever Aqua, admit, that's how they did it.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the old projectors. One of the need for something, of course, is one of the reasons for our inventions. And it was interesting that there was a bet on whether a horse, as it galloped, that all four legs were off the ground. And so they arranged several cameras to take pictures of the horse as it galloped by. And then they had to, basically use a shutter mechanism to give that projection. And so that was one of the first cameras or first projectors. So it's amazing. But again, everything that we've been talking about, whether it's the electromagnetic spectrum, energy in itself, there is a resonance, there is a signature, there is a frequency. So we as humans are pretty much in that Schumann resonance. So these reptilians, these hybrids, have to have their own resonance. There was an old movie, a sci-fi back in the 650s, I think it was, and it was funny because there were these space invaders that used robots. Well, it turns out the robots were tubes because they didn't have the concept of solid state like they did in those movies. And so all these robots had tubes in them. Well, they found out that if they drove around with PA systems at a very high frequency, they could shatter the tubes, kind of the Memorex thing. And it was funny at the end of the movie. They said, well, when they finally get their technology to solid state, what are we going to do now? It was just funny the way they brought that up. Robots being operated by tubes. Funny. Go ahead.
Well, I sent you a lot of pictures, and that's exactly the pictures I sent you. I don't know if you put any of them on the show, but we can do it like next week or later this week. But what I was
I got all the pictures up that you said to put up. So.
Oh, okay. So if you look at these people, the Pope, Joyce Meyer, and I took a beating, by the way, a tongue lashing from many people that you've listened to the other show we did. Of course, they were the Christians. Okay, for saying Joyce Meyer was not who she says she is, and a few of them went and looked up what I said, and sure enough, they said they came back and apologized. But you know what? When I showed Scott these pictures, I would stop the frame, and all of a sudden there's all these anomalies. The teeth are not gone or pointed. There's no teeth here. There's a big, large, bulbous thing sticking out of the neck. When I started, split eye. When I started doing that, I started to come across all of these. I mean, we're talking literal, the whole face gone on one of these people. This is the frequency. This is a problem. They're at a much higher level. And when they come in on that, the frequency is like these bands, and you'll see it straight across. It'll go straight across. Everything else in the picture will remain solid. But when they hit that frequency and they disturb it, in other words, then all of a sudden the whole thing goes cattywampus, and there you can see all kinds of anomalies on their face, as in their face half disappears. That's because it's just a hologram. You're looking at a hologram, and you say, but Julie, I could touch them, and they would feel like a person. Yes, what you're not understanding is that it's like a suit, like an Egger suit, okay? You look at Men in Black, and the guy goes out, and he has his gun, and the disc landed in his yard, and he stands over the hole, and this thing says, whatever, he says, drop your weapon, Earthling, and he says, you get my gun or over my dead body or whatever, and he goes, okay, your choice. So this bug-looking thing ends up using he takes out the insides of the guy and uses it as a mask, but he gets into the Egger suit. So, and the suit is all cattywampus because he didn't get it all just right, but he was in an Egger suit. They're doing. It's literally a suit. that they can put on using frequency, and it creates solid matter, a mass. I know that sounds like impossible, but remember, you only know what you know, what everybody on this earth knows combined isn't even a fraction of the truth of the universe, the reality of anything. And you know what? When people say, Scott, well, you can't make, but actually, the school systems have taught people 1 + 1 is 2, and 2 + 10 is 12. But that's really not true, because in the world of matter manipulation, quantum physics, you can turn one item into many. And they'll say, that's just not possible. Well, yeah, because Jesus did it in the Bible. He showed us that it's possible. It wasn't magic. It was matter manipulation, physics. So that's one of the things that I thought was really, that the frequency of these, whatever, I don't know, these cloaking devices, they're able to literally create a hologram, and when you touch it or shake, well, actually, I've been told it kind of feels like synthetic, but that you can feel that it's not a reptilian, obviously, with 3 claws. But if you look on those pictures, you will see every one of those so-called people are losing their cloaking abilities. But it happens within 100th of a frame, and that's why if you're standing there talking to them, you won't see it. And the only time you would see it if it's a major shift, especially if reptilians get nervous or that the human body starts to behave in such a way that they're not used to it, they will actually freak out themselves, and then you sitting in the audience might see your pastor shift. And by the way, Scott and I both think and believe, we are convinced that all pastors are shapeshifters, because there's no way that they could have gained this much control over this is it. These churches have been the reason and the way they've been able to influence, and they knew they would have to build this stuff and take over it, because people will do anything if they believe, if they have faith in a religion. They'll do anything. You're going to do anything. So, but I'm telling you, Scott, that's exactly what's happening with those pictures, and you can see where Joyce Meyer literally goes from one picture she has like almost no teeth, and another picture she's got points, and then all the teeth are the same, like a white band. That's because they're an illusion. They're a hologram. And did I send you the ones of Hillary Clinton?
Yes, and they're posted.
Yeah, so you look at her tongue. Look at her tongue, you guys. Go look at those pictures. Her tongue is a reptilian tongue. You can't miss it. And her eyes as well are pictured on there. You need to go and look. And the reason I sent those is speaking about her like she's real. Well, she's done that woman. And even people saying, let's pray for her and hope she gets well and all this. Another bit of information I came across today, Scott, was that it was unclassified. It came out yesterday, unclassified, and within seconds, literally, it was refracted off the internet and listed as classified. Now, I don't know if there was an accident with the CIA, they did this or what, but it said that she was in an airplane, the plane went down, and one person was killed in this crash, and she was wounded or something like that. And so the Hillary Clinton that you guys are seeing isn't her. She's somewhere not doing well, because of this crash. And so I don't know what to make of that. I'm going to look into it again. I want to talk to Dr. William Mount, because he was a former ambassador, and he was able to get a hold of that, but then they turned around and reclassified it as top secret. So, but I'm just telling you that you're not seeing, you never have seen a person. You're seeing a person looking like a person, but it is a reptilian. That I wish you guys would just get it in your head that these are not human beings, as in they are human, as in the way human is meant, serpent man, but they are not made by God. They have no soul matrix. You got to understand that, because everybody's looking and saying, well, we got to pray for these people. No, you don't, because they're fallen angels, sons and daughters of the fallen angel. They're wicked, and they will never go to heaven, and they will never be good. They don't know how. It's not in them to be. So, and also you've got pastors out there right now that are saying, you got to vote for Trump. What God says we're going to have to vote for Trump. God would never say fallen angel and his offspring. I'm sorry. And Donald Trump is not human either. He's not. Nobody that's anybody is human. That's not how it works. So, and I keep saying that, but people keep thinking they're dealing with people. You are not dealing with people. You're dealing with reptilians that use frequency to cloak themselves. And that's what we're up against. So, Scott, if we can, if you guys want to be part of helping Scott financially to get this done, to make one of these, it will be great. I will, when he's down here, I'll record on a camera him going into wherever and watching these things squirm and uncloak, and then I will announce it to you guys we'll just give you private emails and say, okay, this is what it costs to make it. If you guys want one, let us know. Because I do believe that we deserve to have that little something on our side so we can at least see them, kind of like the glasses on They Live. But it's all about the frequency, Scott. That's how they're doing it.
Yeah, and again, I think there's several technologies. One, the type of visual cloaking, but I think also too a type of hypnosis or a mind control is another. And but again, that would be because of a resonance or a frequency. And so if that can be to be stopped, to be jammed, whatever it takes, and it probably wouldn't take much. Wouldn't be something you'd have to worry about, the FCC coming down on you. Because I mentioned that before. If you're thinking about jamming, be very careful, because that's the one thing the FCC can get you for, and some of those fines can be up to $10,000 a day. So that's an avenue we don't want to address. Don't want to go that way. That's why some of the stuff I've been asked to work with, jamming drones. Well, yeah, okay, but again, you're subject under the FCC rules, Part 15. So that's something I don't even want to deal with. But, all right, Julie, we're down to about 25 minutes. What else you want to go into now?
I also found out today, Dr. Mount had shown a bunch of sun flare activity, and I was reading. Well, in the NASA reports there's no activity with the sun whatsoever, none, and it's fine. But then the people who have technology monitoring the sun are putting out the graphs, and it's not true. There's been some major spikes in sun flares, and it was suggested that maybe people could carry around an extra magnet or two in their pocket, because the magnets will help you. I make a certain kind of necklace with a stone that happens to be highly magnetic. So, he's saying that if you can do this, it would probably be a good idea, because these sun flares, it's again with the electromagnetic, bad, or to be just all of a sudden somebody's sick or they don't feel good and they have to go, run to the doctor or whatever. And he said these sun flares have a major amount of influence over how we feel and how we think. So that's what he saw, and he showed it to me.
Yeah, I'm going to try and look up that frequency too, the particular pulse. I believe it's going to be something in the gamma, and that literally means it would come through. Though you don't see it, it would be like X-ray, And that's not good. That would definitely cause your thyroid, your brain, everything else to have issues. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you know what? What's happening with all of this is people are actually starting to feel really sick, and they're running to the doctor. I know several people that have been very ill. Be aware that they are actually throwing these viruses out of the aircraft. They're doing that in the chemtrails. So they and I have a sister that's very really into all the health food and all of that stuff, and even she's sick. So this is what they're doing. They're actually spewing this stuff out of these airplanes, and that's what they're doing. And also, Keith, well, his name is Chris Archer, but his new channel, by the way, is Keith Strongbone, and that's behind him now. And he caught a black-winged creature, which I was going to send that part of the video to Scott, and I neglected to do it. I'm not kidding. Go over this train crash where this thing supposedly happened, this Hoboken thing, where they did do something, but it's not what they said. There was a creature on top of the building right there behind it, and I saw this thing land and then get up and fly away. And then he played it over and over, and sure enough, it's something that is flying with wings. So if anybody can figure out what that is, I would really, and it's huge. It is huge. And like I said, my son and I saw, and we know what we saw was a dragon. Strongbone, it's like the latest, I think it's the second one that he did, the second one from the top. And go look at it, because I'm telling you right now, whatever that is, it is not good. Absolutely not good. So, Scott, I'm not the only one, but there are people seeing things in this country that no one should be seeing. It's just not possible, but it's happening. So if you happen to see anything like that, please do not think yourself crazy. You can call me. I will not say you're crazy, because I have seen some stuff in my lifetime that none of you would ever believe. I mean, some of you might now, but I'll tell you what, if I'd have talked about this stuff even a year ago, people would have said I was absolutely crazy. So, and also if you want to go on there, he's got video of Trump, and it is a clone. This is not a body double. This is a clone. And he did the video on him, and you just can see that it is not the real guy. So go on Keith Strongbone, and his other channel was Christopher Archer, Destruction by Design. He's got some, I think, put up that are called that, but now it's Keith Strongbone, and go look at his videos, because I can't believe he's just some guy, random guy. He's not connected to any religion or church or anything like that, but I'll tell you what, the Holy Spirit speaks to that boy, because he'll be getting ready for work, Scott, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit will tell him to go turn on the news and turn on his DVR. And he'll do it, and sure enough, he catches shape-shifting all over the place. So if you guys can be more aware of what's going on around you, keep your eyes open. And by the way, Scott, everybody is saying that the dollar's going to crash, but I got a little message from a little birdie yesterday that what they're going to do is they're literally crashing at the moment. They're crashing the Chinese and some other money systems, and the dollar's going to go up. And by the way, the dollar is right now is higher, scrambling towards U.S. money. It's starting to happen now. So they're doing this on purpose. This is what they're doing. And they're manipulating all of this stuff. Don't buy into it, because the very second you think you're going to buy into it, when they do crash it, you're going to lose everything you got. But this is what they're doing right now. And also, Russia, today, the United States declared sanctions against Russia and 180 countries. So we are no longer friends with Russia at 180 countries, including Russia. They just did it today. Obama did it today. And now Putin is saying going to be nuclear war, and it's coming. Their nukes are going to hit right here in this country. He's getting to the end of his rope with Obama, and I think it looks like it's all arranged. And don't forget that this month is one of their holy days or whatever. Their Jewish holy something. And by the way, I think it was Jonathan Kahn. He's a con man, and that other guy that trucks all of them, the Shemitah. Well, by the way, all of your prophecies, Mark so-and-so, whatever your name is, always wearing the prayer shawl, you messianic traitor plant. These people all said that the whole system was going to crash on the Shemitah. Well, it's been like 4 days now, and it didn't crash, and they didn't say it might. They said it would. All the stuff that you predicted, all you guys out there, all you so-called pastors, you all of you, false. So you guys, if you're listening to these morons, you need to cut them off right now, because they all said it was going to happen, and it did not happen. But they have one of their big days in this month, and this constellation, this 13 constellation, going to line up. So everybody's looking at that time this month for something to happen, because the Queen did say last year, right before Christmas, enjoy your Christmas. It's your final one. So we know that they've got something up their sleeve. So everybody, you need to pray against these people. Pray against their plans. Pray against them. Go in the spirit realm and fight against them. Don't say, oh, God, please make it stop. No, I throw fire right now into all of Lucifer's plans. I just burn up his plans in the name of Jesus. Get in there and you do something. I take the sword to his plans and I chop them up in the name of Jesus. So that's what you need to do. So that's my best advice, Scott, because I know that this month they're planning something. And also November 22nd. Oh, no, I don't like that day either, because of that movie that I saw. I went and checked out, and November 22nd or 20th was a big deal on that movie, and that's when something major started. So, I don't know, Scott, I'm just on the leer right now, on the leery side,
Well, the Kennedy assassination, I think, was November 22nd. I wanted to point out that on the sun flares, it's going to be a wide spectrum of ultraviolet through X-ray. Now, that literally means that on the X-ray, it's going to go right through the buildings, right through, the roofs, right through everything, and that's a bad thing. Now, I don't know if anyone was paying attention to a lot of the space shuttle activity in the 80s before the disaster, but any time that they had a gamma exposure, they're in their computers, and those were Hewlett-Packard computers, by the way. And Julie and I were talking about Hewlett-Packard over the weekend, where they came from and what they were all about. Quite an interesting company. But they had a standardized, almost kind of like a laptop even back then, and it was pretty basic, but it was used as the backup computer. And gamma was an issue because of ROMs, read-only memory chips. I don't know if some of you remember those or not, the ROMs. And it would wipe them out. In fact, the original ROMs, that's how you wiped them out in the first place, is you could place them underneath an ultraviolet light. It would absolutely wipe it clean. And so that was a vulnerability for any craft that was up there. And, of course, they had to change all of that. But let's see here. When Julie was talking about pastors, let me expound on that. Okay, there's always going to be those who believe that they're doing good, have their hearts are in the right place, but they're under the brainwashing of this basic church structure that keeps them in bondage. Okay, so there's going to be those people. But what Julie's talking about is the mainstream. Everything that you're seeing on TVN, everything that you're seeing, like Joyce Myers all the way through, Hagee, these guys are not even human. They are the bottom of the barrel. They are the synagogue of Satan. They are the seed of Satan. They literally are there to deceive. And here's the key. If I were to walk up to Hagee, and by the way, he gave a testimony one time years ago about when he supposedly was counseling a witch and she manifested and he ran out of the room. Well, excuse me. That's another day in the office with me, okay? So what he was trying to tell people that whenever you have the supernatural, you're to fear it. Well, that's the exact opposite of what Jesus Christ told us. And so in our understanding of who we are and the power that's been given to us, then we take care of business. We assure that by speaking in the spirit realm, standing in the blood of Jesus Christ, that the authority in us, that as we command forward, the demons have to obey. Now, you'll get a few that want to, like children, that want to push to see how far they can push in it, they're the adult. But again, that's where the battle is. That's why when Julie and I are casting out demons, it isn't always just boom, they go flying, though they do. In some instances, like the gal here, she basically threw up all the way back to Montana. And so whenever you're challenged, you stand your ground. Well, these pastors, these men that shouldn't even be in their position, are telling you the exact opposite. They're denying that these issues are really out there. They're denying that Christians can have demons. They're denying curses, denying that demons can affect you. And so they're lying to you to the point that you're perishing. You're in bondage. Your marriages are a mess. You've been divorced several times. You're addicted to something. You're getting visitation from demons. And we ain't seen nothing yet, man. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. And that acceleration is already taking place because of the type of phone calls that I'm getting in. And by the way, I've called everybody that I was on my list. And if, some of you I called twice and there was no answer, so, if I called you. So I've called everybody. If you still need to talk to me, call again. And we'll start over on the list because I'm caught up now. I'm caught up on my emails. I'm caught up on everything. And so this would be a good time to approach that. And let me pray for you. Let me break the curses off of you. Let me find out what's going on so we can address it. Okay? So anyone that denies what's going on here, then you've got blocking, hindering spirits. If you do not believe in Jesus Christ or Jesus Christ offends you, then you have Antichrist spirits. Okay? And these are two different types of demons, basically at two different ends. And what does that resemble to me? Republican, Democrat. This two-tier system, this left-right paradigm that divides us, when the truth is really in the middle somewhere. So just understand that what they're doing now with technology, what they're doing with everything that they're throwing onto us, it's a last-ditch effort. How many of you, you go to the fireworks on 4th of July and you wait for the grand finale? Well, this economic issue that's going on, and Julie talking about the dollar actually increasing, like the Deutsche Bank, okay, that's another indicator. They're doing this on purpose, and so this is what demons do. They get you all built up. They get you into a relationship with somebody, and they're the most wonderful, person you ever met, and you fall head over heels with them, and then you find out that they're absolutely, the devil himself. And so you're on a mountain when you fall. You're on a pedestal when they kick it out from underneath you. And that is exactly what they're doing. There'll be one more last stimulation, more money being transferring, and all the stuff that they're doing. People will relax, and just the element of surprise. Absolutely, that's what they're doing, and that's what demons do. That's the very nature of the beast. And so, when we have a supposable Christian church that denies deliverance, that is your key that a reptilian is running that church. Now, it can be a human who's in ignorance and under brainwashing, and in their ignorance, they literally are in bed with that enemy. Because if the Holy Spirit tells Julie and I to cast out demons, then why is the Holy Spirit not telling these guys? Well, it's because they don't have a relationship. There's something wrong with this picture, because Scripture is quite clear what we're supposed to do. And it's man's doctrine, it's man's traditions, these doctrines of demons that have twisted and turned Scripture to the point that it no longer is being taught the way that it was. Okay? You want to go back to an orthodox system? Works for me. Because I'll tell you what, with what we have out there now, I've seen nothing but, when you see somebody who is self-destructive, and it may be a child of yours, it may be a spouse of yours, and you care about them very much, it's heartbreaking to watch them destroy themselves. And when they don't want help, that's one of the problems with personality disorders. They're so brainwashed that that's who they are, and they'll reject help, and you can never get them to the next level. And there's another thing, too. Many of the people that I've worked with over the years, that I'll get them to a certain level, and we're getting now down to the nitty-gritty. We peeled that onion back, and we're down to that last core, and this one's going to hurt. This one's going to leave a scar, and they don't want to do it, and they bail. And then we never get to that other level. Oh, they're 3/4 better. They felt better than they ever have in their whole life. But you know what? That other 25% in these last days could be a doozy. Because if you still have any fear, if you have any unbelief, your unbelief can cause absolute destruction in your life. And that's unfortunately part of what I see. So, all right, Julie, 5 minutes. You want to close out with something, and I'll finish it?
Okay, well, I did happen to see a few of the Illuminati cards that I wanted to go over. One of them was of the churches, and it was called the Church of Middle America. And it had a church building and all of these UFOs flying all around the church and over top of it. And the Illuminati card says they'll never get it, even when the saucers are flying overhead. So there you go with the cognitive dissonance, right? And then the other card that is going right now is actually being played, but it's going to be coming into even more effect, is the eternal salvation or triple your money back. And, of course, the re-paradises for $30. One while you're alive, lasting as long as you want, and one when you decide to die. No other religion offers a better deal. And then it says, void where prohibited, close cover before striking. Please recycle slightly higher in Canada. So that card is saying that we will give you eternal salvation, and you can have, paradise while you're here, and lasting as long as you want, and one when you decide to die. No other religion offers a better deal. Religion. There's a reason why the word religion is in there. Okay? So that was a done on purpose thing, Scott, when it was in there. And the apathy card, New World Order apathy, says the number one problem in the world today, but who cares? That's it. But who cares? So this is they've actually they're telling you what they've done. They have a fast food chain card, and it says, "Would you like fries with that? Would you like fries with that?" Nobody has any idea what's in those secret recipes, and when they find out, they'll forget again. Order the fries, Earthling. Got it? So this is just a sample of some of the Illuminati cards that are out there. And you'll forget. You'll wonder what's in there. You don't know what's in there, but if you find out, you'll forget. Why? Because there's stuff put in there to make you forget, to make you apathetic, okay? And the Oregon crud, earlier on the show when you first started, you said, yeah, that's some crud, and you said, I think everybody knows what that is. Yeah, everybody but me. I didn't even know what that was, and here I am telling you, the Illuminati card says the Oregon crud. I have no idea what it is, but I'll find out. And you had to write me back and tell me. I don't know what crud is. So the card for the Oregon crud is that it's some kind of a something that lands on the people, the animals, everything, and it's like flesh eating or something. It's like it looks like it's eating their flesh away, but it's called the Oregon crud. So that's what they're predicting for that area, and it's their cards. I mean, all of them have come true so far. So I'm just warning you that's one on the list. So there you go.
Yeah, when I keep thinking about Rockefeller, when he said, you dumb SOBs, you deserve everything coming to you, you're so stupid. Well, I'm afraid he's right. I mean, we don't deserve anything like that, but I know what he's talking about. We've allowed it to happen. We've given carte blanche to these people that we're supposed to be watching, that's supposed to have our backs, and it turns out they're actually the wolves. And so we've put ourselves in a predicament that literally is, our own demise. We've dug our own graves. We've just dug our own graves, and it's really sad. And the thing of it is, too, is, with the corporate coming together of those who are in Christ Jesus could have rectified this whole thing. Is there a potential? Of course there is. Of course there is. That's what hope is. But in also understanding, the book of Revelation, now let's hope that the book wasn't altered and changed intentionally to keep us from ever fighting. I guess that's always a, quote, possibility, because at this late in the game and what I've seen already, man, anything's possible. Anything is possible. Anything. It's mind-boggling. So, all right, Julie. Well, I think we're done for tonight, and I'll be here tomorrow. Now, I've got some things I want to specifically talk about. I need to do a little more research before I name that, but otherwise I'll be on tomorrow night, and then Julie will be back on Wednesday, and then of course as the week goes, so we're heading into some perilous times. All right, God bless.